Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Writing Visual Studio Extensions with Matt. That's me. And today, as usual, we got the talented producer, James, with us. Hello, James. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I forgot to turn off my music. There
Uh-oh.
we go. I don't know if you can hear it, but
No. Your microphone's too good. That's how you know you have a good microphone. It's like when you're playing music and nobody can hear it.
it's impressive what $20 can buy you on Amazon these days.
It's very true.
Yeah. So we have a special episode today, I think. We have a lot of people joining here this early, so that's a good sign. So I take it that people are curious about this update, the new preview to Visual Studio 16.10, the preview 2 that we just shipped. I assume that's why you're all here.
That's why I'm here.
Yep. So we're going to dedicate an episode for that. No. Haha. Super funny. 64-bit. Okay. James, I don't know. I don't know what your take is on this. I've been looking much forward to this for a long, long time. And of course, this Monday we announced that Visual Studio 2022 will be 64-bit, right? But we've known that for quite a while. I'm surprised that this never leaked. Did you hear of a leak?
Not a leak, no. I mean, I think everyone's been asking it for a long time, and yeah, I'm surprised that there wasn't like an official leak of something I've known for a while. I've known for like what, 10 years? No, I'm just kidding. For a little bit, not 10 years. It's been a little bit.
For a little bit.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was gonna double down on writing extensions in this very program here on Fridays or Saturdays, depending on where in the world you are. And so this is the first time I can do it. This is going to be the first of many, hopefully, episodes on 64-bit and Visual Studio 2022 and so on. There is a big caveat to what I'm going to show today, and that is that I don't actually have the ability to show you Visual Studio 2022, or
because it was like a more of a here's what's coming. It wasn't like you can go get this right now.
Right. That also means we don't the bits are not kind of ready yet. So even though of course we have the bits and all this sort of stuff, we don't have everything working, and we're not in a state where we can actually use it to write an extension as it is right now. That, however, doesn't mean that we can't build an extension in Visual Studio 2019 the exact way we would do it for 2017. 2022. This is going to trip me up. I do this constantly. I think I do this every time there's a new major version of Visual Studio. I mix the years and the Visual Studio version numbers. But we're going to do the news first. And I promise I'll make this short, okay? Because you're here for the 64-bit. So in news, let's look at my screen here. So in the news, we have a couple of updates on the V6 community. One of them is that the extensibility template pack is now part of sort of the V6 community organization. It's all the idea is that we keep all the different components together that make up sort of the new sort of the new toolkit. And so that includes, of course, already the community Visual Studio Toolkit NuGet package. Now it also has the template pack, and then a new thing that was contributed by Cynthia, she added the community Visual Studio VSCT NuGet package. Okay, so that basically means that whole VS Global NuGet pack, VSCT file we used to alias things are now in a NuGet package that can be updated out of band, and the extensibility template pack has been updated to use that as well. And so the different pieces of the story here is coming together very nicely. So I'm very excited for that. So go check out the V6 community, github.com/V6 community, and join the conversations. There's actually already some good discussions. I've enabled discussions in all these, and there's already a bunch taking place here. So join in on the fun. Let's hear what you have to say, and let's build some great stuff together. So in other news, I've been talking internally with various different team members on the concept of having a community-driven toolkit, and it's actually generated a lot of excitement internally on the Visual Studio team. And so I was able to get, like, kind of early on, Andrew Arnott, that some of you might be familiar with. He's he's been on the Visual Studio Office Hour several times. He's been helping out with already been helping out with the toolkit on answering some questions. He's the guy who writes the Visual Studio threading analyzers and other things. He said that he want to help out several hours a month with like answering questions, doing code reviews, making sure we are like following the right path. So that's super awesome, right? We actually have support from people that really know their internal stuff on Visual Studio. But on top of that, it generated so much excitement that our architect, he says, no, you should have another person that is that other person, that's Bertrand, and he's basically the architect or a part of the design team for the new extensibility model that is starting to come, but it won't be here. Like it begins now, right? So it takes years for that to come to fruition. So he's here to make sure that also we follow the best practices, but take the learnings from the toolkit, from our usage of how we as extenders want to do this, and port that back into that new extensibility model, all that learning. And also make sure that whatever we do on the toolkit doesn't conflict with the extensibility model and vice versa, which is like super cool, right? So we've got two really, really strong resources, probably the best we could ever have hoped for to be involved in this. So that has me tremendously excited. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, this toolkit stuff, go check it out. It's kind of explained on the README page, or go back in time in the YouTube history here and look at previous episodes where it's all explained and demoed and all that stuff. Okay. But enough of that. I see we have Justin here today. Hello, Justin. Justin Clarebird in the YouTube comments. You don't see him on Twitch, but he's in YouTube here. Justin, he used to be the program manager for Visual Studio Extensibility. Can you believe it? And I believe now he's hanging out in sunny Australia. I don't know if it's sunny this time of year, but Australia nonetheless. So of course, if anything is ever gone wrong, if there's any problems with anything related to Visual Studio Extensibility, we just blame Justin, okay? So let's take a look. I'm gonna create a new extension. This is Visual Studio 2019. And I'm gonna create, what am I gonna create? I'm gonna create a Visual Studio. I'm gonna create a V6 project. Let's see here, what do I have to choose from? I might have nuked the one that was called Visual Studio Project Modern. I did do that, didn't I? Okay, so we just take the V6 project. So I'm just gonna create a regular V6 project here. Okay, so let's look at sort of what are the steps required or needed in order to prepare our extension for 64-bit, okay? I should mention before we kind of get further into this, I do expect that this is going to be a lot of Q&A because this is the first time we kind of can talk about it in this forum with extenders. So please fire away your questions here and I'll see if I can take them along and as we go along. And James, if you can monitor and feel free to interrupt me as well. I could imagine there's going to be a lot. So let's before we go into how we're actually going to do it, let me just talk a little bit about what it means that is 64-bit. So there's a few things. So let's just take the first one. Your extension, if you have written an extension in .NET and you're compiling in any CPU, which is the default for all our project templates throughout history, right? Then you're good. Then you don't have any issues with like going to a 64-bit. But if you specifically have a 32-bit extension because maybe you have dependencies on, let's say, native components that are only 32 bits or whatever. Like I have a few extensions that uses something that can compile SAS files, like that's a web technology, SAS files. And I have a native binding file for that. And that's a 32-bit. So I'll have to now go to where I got that 32-bit. I know for a fact they have a 64-bit as well. And now I have to include that too, or replace it with a 64-bit, such that I can compile without compiler warnings into 64-bit. So if you use any CPU or you use 64-bit or AMD 64, you're good. Okay, that's kind of what it means to be 64-bit in our world here. That doesn't mean that if you compile to any CPU, that doesn't mean that your extension is going to work on both Dev 16 and Dev 17, like 2019 and 2022. It won't. You have to split your extension. If your extension contains code, right? If it's not an extension pack or a theme, or it just has some package dev files or whatever, or snippet packs, text made bundle files. But if it contains compiled code, let's say, then you have to basically split your extension into two. One targeted Dev 17 plus and one targeted Dev 16 and below. And I'm going to show you how to do that. It's actually not that big of a headache. And so I'll show you that. But let's see here. So why is that? Well, it turned out that a bunch of these old interrupt assemblies that we used to have, right? There's all these, dot design time and dot interrupt and, DLL files and NuGet packages that make up the Visual Studio SDK. It turned out that when they want to move them to 64-bit, they figured out that some of these data types or whatever that are in them was not compatible or created conflicts. And so they saw it as an opportunity. So we knew that we had to do something that was going to be breaking changes. And then they said, okay, when we're then doing that, if you're going to change a data type, let's say instead of using, I'm making this up. Okay. So instead of having an integer, they're going to, as a parameter to a method on some interface that's in the interrupt, instead of having an integer, they need to make it a string because 64-bit, right? I'm just making an example here. The problem is that now that's going to break existing extensions. So if you just upgrade to the 17.0 Visual Studio SDK, like it all looks kind of similar. It might, you can't compile, right? Because what before took an integer now takes a string. But also, like, even if something didn't change, it could change how it works internally because of things and so it might break at runtime. So they saw, okay, we have these break and changes coming to a bunch of our interrupt assemblies. Why not take the opportunity to kind of maybe modernize them just a little bit to make them a little bit clearer? And I know that some of these are old, and you've definitely expressed in the past that some of these interfaces that you've been using for a long time has been like they're very archaic. They're hard to understand. You can't intuit how to use them just by looking at them and dotting through with IntelliSense and so on. Like it requires a lot more tribal knowledge, Googling, Stack Overflow, and whatnot. And so they took this opportunity to say, okay, let's kind of clean that up a little bit. And so what's really cool is that they're now taking all the interrupt assemblies, all the, Visual Studio, Microsoft Visual Studio.shell. Like, I have a list here. Here's one. Microsoft Visual Studio.shell.interrupt.10.0, right? That's one. Then there's 12.0, 12.1.designTime, 14.0.designTime, 14.1.designTime, 14.2.designTime, and so on and so on and so on. The list was actually quite long. And so what they've done is taken all those different NuGet packages, and there's a lot. The list I'm looking at, I haven't counted them, but I'm guessing 80 that I'm looking at here. 60. Now that's just one, Microsoft.visualstudio.interrupt. So that's fantastic, right? Now they just put them all in one. And so we can do that when we're dealing with breaking changes. So because we knew we were going to have a breaking change to be able to introduce 64-bit into Visual Studio, there was an opportunity to take advantage of that breaking change and then making more changes, basically. So that's why we have to split things up. I guess we as extenders, we pay a little bit of a price for moving to 64-bit. Everyone, I guess, does, but the end user, of course, is gonna get the benefit. Any specific questions on that? So the setup API, since it doesn't run inside of VS Process, can it be accessed from 32-bit code? The setup API, some of the services are running within Visual Studio, the setup services. But I don't know if that was one that had issues with 64-bit, or if it was only kind of the older ones that had that. So I don't know. Is not the easy answer, but is this the answer that I got? I don't know. Yeah. But if you're using the services that run inside Visual Studio, then they will be 64-bit only. At least while running inside Visual Studio. Jan says, extenders always pay a price. Yes. Sometimes it's a high price, sometimes it's a lower price. For something that is as big as this, like moving to 64-bit, yes. And at some point in the future, when we're moving to .NET 6 or whatever, 7, whatever it's going to be in the future, that may also introduce a thing, right? But that's hopefully when the new extensibility model comes in, and the community toolkit will continue just to work across, so that should be fine. That goes for the community toolkit now as well. When it comes to 17.0, is that we will be able to maintain the same interface in the toolkit, so that if you're using the toolkit today, you won't have to make as many changes as if you didn't use the toolkit. Okay. So let's make an extension here. I have an extension. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna give it a.
Here's a quick one for you from Justin, who said, I used any CPU. I have no 32-bit specific code. Will I need to update my extensions? That's probably a very common question.
Yes, you will only have to update your extensions when you're using those APIs where the interrupt types have changed. So the answer might be no. You don't have to do anything else to change your code. But the answer could be you need to make a few modifications. So I know you hate when I say it depends, right? But it does. Like, it depends on what APIs you're calling today. What happened to my known monikers explorer? Didn't I just show it? I was just going to grab an image. Oh, here it is. So let's just, this is a fantastic, beautiful one. So let's do a 90 pixel one of that. And what did I even call this? This was called V6 Project 2, I believe. So we're going to give it a new folder, resources, and we're going to put this one in. We're going to call it icons. There we go. So now, take a look and include our resources. Oh, it's all right there. There you go. Is that right? Can that be right? Oh, I'm looking at the wrong. There we go. Okay, so I want to show you this. So the first thing you want to do is, of course, we want to include our thing in the project. We want to make sure that this icon right here, I accidentally hit the wrong button. Content, including V6 true. And we want to add it to our V6 manifest. There's a reason why I want to show you this. I'm not just like, trying to make a complete extension for us to make it 64-bit compliant. Okay. So the first thing, like, let's say you have an existing extension. You want to make sure that you modernize it first. So when I create a new extension like this, it's already modernized, right? And by modernized, I mean that your csproj file here, that you're using package references. You're not using package.config. You're using package reference. And you're using the Microsoft Visual Studio SDK and the build tools, these two. So these are the two. These two are the ones that make up the SDK. This is the SDK, and this is how you build it, right? So you want both of those as package references. And once you have that, you kind of have modernized your app. So step one, modernize your extension. Step two, this is where it's kind of interesting. Now we are going to split this project, V6 Project 2, into two. So I'm going to just for making this easier, I'm going to call this project demo. I'm going to call this demo 16 because this is for Visual Studio 2019. And then I'm going to do something. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to my solution. I'm going to add new project. And I'm going to add a shared project, or shared C# project. That's what I need. And I'm going to call this, so demo 16, I'm going to call this demo shared. There we go. And then I'm going to add another project here, and that's going to be, not an existing one. I want to add a new one. Add new project. I'm going to add a V6 project, and I'm going to call this demo 17. Okay. There we go. So now, here's what we got. All right. We got 3 projects. We got, these are called heads, and then we have the shared project. So I have an extension with 2 heads, you can say. Okay. So I'm going to take my all my C# files. I'm going to take that. I'm going to drag that down to my shared project. There we go. So now I can delete that from here. That means that I no longer have to have. I no longer have to have those in here. I move that down, and then my resources and icons, I want to move that down there too. There we go. Okay, so I'll come in here. I'm gonna add a reference shared project to demo shared there. Okay, I'm gonna do that from my dev 17 as well. There we go. So now they both reference it. There's a few things I want to make sure that we do right, because you see here inside my package here, let's just call the namespace here for shared, or sorry, for demo. Whatever your namespace was, you can call it whatever. You keep whatever namespace you've got, right? And then these are all good. I no longer need my resources and icons right here. Well, I kind of need my resources. I'm just going to remove my icons, and now I'm going to add the icon back in, but I'm going to reference it from my file down here. So I'm going to right click and say add existing item. We're going to go into our shared project, resources, and find my PNG. I'm going to add it as a link. What? Well, that's weird. Really? Just going to build it here and see what happens. They're already to icon. How can there be a link to icon? Oh, it's right there. That's weird. Let's get rid of that. I don't know the syntax for this. Okay, let's close this. Open it again. Okay, so now we're good to go. So I'm gonna go in here and resources, and let's try this again. Add. What is that about? See his proj file. That's bizarre. That is highly weird. What is going on here? Okay, let's do it. Do I dare delete this? Yeah. Like it didn't delete my CS proj file. Can I build it? Build succeeded. Okay. So let's just look at what the output is that we got here. So dev 17. All right, we have our regular V6 here, and inside the V6 we have the content of our shared folder compiled to a DLL, and it's right there. So let me explain what a shared folder is. Shared folder is basically a kind of linked files. So it's kind of bucket where my head projects will take the code and compile it into that project like it was part of the project itself. There is no output from a shared project. The shared project doesn't compile. It kind of is just a bucket that holds code, right? And so that's exactly how the toolkit is built as well. So we want to keep our manifest in each place. So on our dev 16, we want to have the exact same wording here. We want to say this is supported in dev 16 up until but not including 17, right? So, and then in our 17 extension here, we're going to write it a little bit differently. And let's see here. Let's see if I can get the, yeah, I can. Here we go. So for dev 17, let me just clean up a little bit here. We can remove the dependencies. So here's how you specify that it's support in 17 up to but not including 18. That's like that. But we're gonna do a little bit extra. We're gonna go in here and we're gonna add a new element as a child to installation target. And that is called product. I think actually I copy paste that. Product architecture. AMD64. Okay, that's the value. Or you can also do x86. But x86 will not work on 2022, right? Dev 17. Only 64-bit will. So we end up, in this case, with, let's see here. Okay, I'm just going to try that again. So we end up with having two projects that doesn't really have anything except for the V6 manifest. And that's it. That's the difference between the two. Is kind of the V6 manifest. But of course, there's going to be a few other differences. I just want to see if I can add this icon again. Because what was that about? That one. Add us a link. No. This is highly confusing to me. Okay. Well, I guess I could just put it in there, and then that'll be fine too. Maybe you have different icons. Maybe one is an icon for your 2022, and one is an icon for something else. All right, 19 or whatever. So we'll just take this and copy it into 17. And so in 17 we can do the same thing. So that is in essence the simplicity. And this was I understand this is a very simple demo, but I hope you understand, like, this is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. So I hope it didn't scare anyone away. Make a shared project. We're going to have a lot of videos of this, like small little tutorials, 5-minute videos, walk through. I'm actually looking through an internal wiki that we're going to make public as soon as you guys can get your hands on the VS 2022 preview, so that you can see how this works. And then that will all be out there. There is one thing I want to make sure that we understand. And that is that when we go and manage NuGet packages for our demo 17 project, we don't want to be using the same SDK, right? We want to update it. And lo and behold, there is in fact a 17 out there on the NuGets as a preview. So let me just take it. I don't know if it works. I can talk to you about why that is. We do that. And not only is there an updated version for the SDK, but also for build tools. There we go. So update to latest pre-release. So if you want to take a peek at what's inside those NuGet packages, if you care to do a disassembly or whatever, if you're curious, go ahead. Go ahead. So right now we get a lot of, check this out. You get a lot of like compiler warnings because there's not a direct match. So the NuGet package dependency chains are not like smoothed out yet. But of course it will be, so you won't get any of these. Let's see if I can compile.
You got some good questions coming in too.
All right.
So Jay asks, in your last demo, you made changes to the version for VS Community. Why not change the code editor version on it?
That's right. Good call. I'm going to go ahead and do just that.
There you go.
That was what happened. Oh, you go here. That's right. So I actually, the way I like to do this one down here is I like to do it this way. That means you need to have core editor at least version 17. It's just so that when I update this to also support 19, let's say, then I don't have to update it down here. But we never want to do that with the version up here. The version we always want to say tell from what and to what. We want to be specific about the maximum version number. Always.
Okay. All right. How about this one? Chris was asking earlier, as preview versions of VS 2022 are made available, do you know if there's going to be corresponding Visual Studio build tools installers also? Will they be available? I know you're talking about this.
You know, I don't actually know. I don't know. Even if I say I assume so, that shouldn't help you because I still don't know. Oh, so sorry.
It's okay.
Do we normally do that?
I don't know.
Well, the build tools are kind of new. I don't know if they existed by the time that Visual Studio 2019 got its first preview. So maybe we don't have any prior art, and therefore I can't say, oh, we usually do that. I might be mistaken. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so any questions to splitting your extension up like this into with a shared project? Let me know. Okay, so now we've done that. It actually built just fine. I don't know if you noticed, but there's so this came out and built just fine. So what we can do, what we do in the toolkit, for instance, is if there are differences, we don't want to make big changes in our shared code here, we can go in and do a little of a cool trick here. Let's go in and under build and say, hey, this one supports VS 17, like that. And up here, we add a symbol called VS 16. So now they're there. We could go into our C# code, and we could do. Oh, I disabled that margin. Interesting. Anyway, so I could go in here and do like an if def. So I could say if VS 16, do it this way. Else, do something else, and then end if. Or I can even say else if, like if I have multiple of these. So else if VS 17, do something else. Whatever floats your boat, whatever API you're using, you can do it that way. That make sense? And then you can just switch. Say, oh, I want to see what the 17 is going to look like. And then boom, now that lights up. And so you get a compiler error if you're using things in your if defs that are not, these are called if def. Is that just internally we call them if defs, or is that like what everybody calls them? I don't know.
I think it's like just conditional compilation flags. I've always called them if defs, but I don't know.
Okay. All right. And again, this is pretty common if you ever build like NuGet packages that runs on .NET Core and .NET Standard and .NET Framework and all that sort of stuff. Then sometimes you if def your way around to hit the right API for the right framework that you're compiling to. Justin says everybody calls them if defs. Justin, how do you know that everybody calls them? I mean, you know that you call them if defs. Sorry, Justin. All right. So that was just that simple example to show how you could do that. I want to show a completely different example. So let's say that you have a non-code extension. So extension pack, for instance. Let's just create an extension pack here. It could be an extension pack, a snippet pack, text-made bundle thing, something that ships a package dev, Visual Studio theme. Yeah. You know, anything that doesn't reference any of the interrupt assemblies that have break and changes in them, right? You can target multiple. You can target dev 16 and 17 from the same extension. So here I have an extension pack. We're not even going to entertain looking at the. Okay, I guess we are. This is an extension pack. It's literally just an empty V6 project with a JSON file in it that has the file extension vsext. That's it. That's an extension pack. So how do we make an extension that works that installs on both? And I'll show you. This is kind of interesting. So I'm gonna just clean this up just a tad. I'm gonna replace this with this. Okay, so check this out, and I'll explain why it is the way it is. So I'm gonna have two different installation targets. I'm gonna have one installation target supporting Visual Studio 2017 and 2016, but not 2017. Okay. And it supports it on a regular 32-bit architecture, x86. Then I have another installation target, which is Visual Studio 2022 only. And it has to be AMD 64, right? 64-bit. And that's because that, when you install the V6 installer that comes along with Visual Studio 2022 knows how to install 64 bits. And so, but not the one in that came before it. So we have to make this distinction and do this. I asked them, why can't we just do this? Why can't I just say 15? Because earlier versions than 2022 it's going to ignore this thing. So they can install it just fine, right? So why not just do this? Well, it has to do with the fact that like older versions of Visual Studio, unless you have the right Visual Studio mix or whatever of the V6 installer, it doesn't know what to do. It can't install the right thing. So we kind of need both, which is not a big deal. And we used to do that. I had that all the time back before we could do version ranges. I don't know if you remember that, but before we could do version ranges, we would always have these multiples, right? We would say, okay, Visual Studio version 10. So of course it wouldn't be community because that didn't exist at the time. So we would have Pro, then we would have like 10, Visual Studio 11, we'll have Visual Studio 12. And then when it came to Visual Studio 14, then all of a sudden we could do this, right? We could say 15.0, not included, like that. So that's how my extensions looked for a long time, is that I would have these. And so, I mean, personally, I don't think it's a big deal, but that's the way it is. I hope it makes sense. I also will caveat up front that I don't, my knowledge has like limits in how deep it runs when it comes to like these inner workings of all these interrupts and all this sort of stuff. I'm not on that team anymore, so I don't get spoon-fed all this knowledge all the time. But I'll do my very best to get the information. If there's questions here I can't understand, I'll see if I can get them answered for next week and so on. Yeah, we announced that the preview will be coming out this summer. That's right. Preview of Visual Studio 2022. It is not officially downloadable right now, Yannick. Sorry about that. I wish I had it, but I don't. Here, by the way, is the Visual Studio SDK version 17. It's I'm not signed in or anything. It's publicly available. You can see all the references. And notice how all these design time things are gone. Like Visual Studio.shell.10.0.design time is gone. Not there anymore. So we're going to have a shorter list of dependencies, so our restore should be faster, which is nice. All right. I'm kind of looking through the questions here. Let me know if you have any. And what we really want to know as well is like, what do you think about that there are breaking changes? Of course, we all prefer that they're not there, but from what I've shown you about using shared projects and how, like in some cases, like codeless extensions, we can do it by having multiple installation targets, and then we just need one extension instead of splitting up into two separate ones. We'd love to know what you think about this. If it's going to be, for the extensions that you have, is it going to be a lot of work? What are your thoughts on that, basically? I did forget to mention one thing that's kind of an important piece of the puzzle. In the future, I don't think we have a timeline for it yet, but we might have a commitment actually to doing it, which is good. That's the step number one. So it's coming. Is the ability for the marketplace to handle multiple Visual Studio extensions under one listing, so that you can have, so my demo 16, demo 17, I can just have one listing that says, okay, it's called demo. And then depending on what version of Visual Studio you're downloading the extension from, you get the right one that matches the target that you've got installed, right? So that's coming. That's going to hopefully alleviate that thing, so you don't end up having a lot of marketplace entries. So like, or at least one more per extension, right? But for now, that's what we do. So. Okay, Jan. Doesn't seem like it'll be a problem. That's good to know. And Jay says +1. I assume, Jay, that you're +1ing what Jan is saying. And yeah, and shared projects, like Justin, he's saying shared projects look like a good way to keep the old extension alive or maintainable. Yeah, that's been my experience too. I've done this in the past too. What was that? Was that the image optimizer? I forget. It's funny enough, my image optimizer extension, I don't know if you know this, that particular extension, but the extensibility team are using it to come up with sort of how to convert an extension to run on 64-bit. And they're sending pull requests, but because CI servers and the NuGet package and everything is not quite there yet, it's like we're trying to get it in so that there's a full working example in time. And I hope that I'll have a bunch of examples as well. We're going to work on a bunch of them here to convert. And hopefully it'll be super easy. What's really cool is that while we're doing this conversion, the team would love the feedback, like what worked, what didn't, what are some pain points. And so we really want to make this as seamless as we possibly can. Because obviously breaking changes are never fun. Oh yeah, off topic here, Sebastian. Was there an episode with an extension with code completion? Did we do IntelliSense? I don't think that we did. Yeah, we should do one. Yeah, we should probably do one. Okay, and so Monday, this coming Monday, we have, and so for Justin and Jan and other people in Australia, I think it's like 8 a.m. Saturday morning right now. So Monday, when we have the Visual Studio office hours, next Monday is going to be about, we're going to go deep on the 64-bit Visual Studio 2022 with Andy, and he can really go deep on like how all the stuff internally that we had to do. Like, so it's going to hopefully be some really good technical stuff and very interesting for extenders too. But it's going to be, the office hours is 3 hours earlier than this Friday show, right? So it might be in the middle of the night for you Australians. But it's 11 a.m. Monday morning Pacific time. And yeah, you should definitely check that out. Office Hours, Sean, is a show. So if you go to YouTube, it's also streamed on Twitch. So what are you on? Your YouTube. So if you go to the Visual Studio channel, youtube.com/Visual Studio, on that channel page, if you scroll down a little bit, there's a playlist where you can see a bunch of episodes from the Visual Studio Office Hours. And it's just going to show up there. It's already out there. We could actually link to the event that has been scheduled. I don't know if you want to do that in the comments, James. So we can get, maybe you already did. I don't know. No, you didn't. Okay, here's John Oliver. He has a good question. What happens if an extension pack contains non-64-bit extensions? Will the extension pack fail completely, or just those extensions that are not supported? Fantastic question. Because this is how we so far have been able to handle the idea of having just a single extension that might carry with it multiple extensions targeting each individual version of Visual Studio. And the way it works today, and the way it will continue to work, is that the Visual Studio, the V6 installer will basically try to install everything, but the ones that it is incompatible with, it will skip. So you can have an extension pack that has that's called demo, and it just refers to demo 16 and demo 17. And when you install that on a box that has dev 17, it will just install the dev 17 one, and it will skip the 16 one. You can still see it in the log, and it might say, I think it will say that it didn't install that one. But it'll just skip it, and it won't stop. It will just skip it and go to the next one in case there's multiple. So that's actually a really nice benefit for that extension packs has. It gives us that version splitting, single point of entry capability.
I'm going to jump off real quick.
Okay, are you're what time is it? Oh yeah, you're gone. Okay, thank you, James.
See you next week. Cheers.
Yes, have a great weekend.
Bye.
All right, I'm now alone, so we'll see here if I'm going to screw up being a producer and a host at the same time. Justin is asking, can we ask open questions during office hours, not just the topic of the day? Yes, but of course, depending on the guests and all that sort of stuff, we may not be able to answer them. But also on this show, we can talk about anything extension related. It doesn't have to be today's topic. So if you have any specific, if anyone has any specific questions about extensibility, this is the premier spot for that, I'd say. Okay. Just running through. Is there a better forum for open questions? There's the Gitter channel. Gitter. So Gitter im/Microsoft/extendvs is a open forum. There's also, if it has to do with the toolkit, then go to the V6 community GitHub organization, and we can have discussions in there. The office hours is after C# Fritz on Mondays. He's up like Pacific time. I think he starts at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. And so we're going to follow like an hour later whenever he stops. We were on an hour after that. Yeah, now we can take advantage of me. I'm all alone. Yeah. We can talk about everything you want to talk about, right? So I will say I'm a little bit surprised that there's not more questions or more like about 64-bit, or that you guys think like, hey, this is the most awful thing ever. Like I have to change my stuff. Or like, is this just kind of, hey, it's okay. No big deal. Like did my demo suck, or is do you need more information to figure out what burden that might be put on your shoulders? Will extension still be based on .NET Framework 4.6.2, or will we be able to target .NET 5 or 6? So Stephen, it's 4.7.2 on Dev 16 on Visual Studio 16. 4.7.2, not 6.2. That's in Visual Studio. Oh boy, .NET Framework 4.6 was Visual Studio 2015 and 2017, and then it's 4.7.2 in 2019. And it's I don't know if it's 4.7.2 or it's 4.8 in 2022, but it's .NET Framework, full framework. It won't be till like 18 at the earliest before it's going to be based on .NET 6, 8, whatever is the thing for various different reasons, right? And we're gonna hopefully talk to Andy about that as well. But imagine if we had to change everything to we did 64-bit and convert to .NET 6 at the same time, right? I think we could all just throw away our extensions. We had to kind of start over. And so I'm not and also the time it would have taken the team to do that would have been just pretty significant. Just converting to 64-bit has been a huge effort, as you can probably imagine. And so porting things to .NET 6, let's say, is going to introduce a whole lot of things as well. But I mean, I'm sure we're going to go there, right, at some point. It's just about doing it at the right time for the right reasons, with the right benefits, like performance and interoperability and platform support and whatnot. And what about the UI layer? That's another funny thing, right? So we're probably the Visual Studio is probably the world's largest, or definitely the world's largest WPF app. But there's also like native UI. There's also like Windows Forms. And like, so there's a whole UI layer we now have to port to whatever the UI stack is going to be on .NET 6 that they choose. Like, is it MAUI? Is it whatever? So just from UI components alone, not looking at anything else, that's going to be a pretty large effort. But then comes all the stuff underneath. It will actually be possible in 2022 to use .NET 5 or 6 to run out of proc. So there's some extensibility point, like the language server protocol and some other service hub related extensibility points that will run .NET 5 and 6 and let you run them. So that's kind of cool. So you kind of get a foot in the door a little bit, but it's not like the entire extensibility model. Yeah, Sean saying, waiting to see how many APIs need updating. I know, me too. I'm very curious. Okay, it's fine so far. What are some things you are excited about in .NET 6? It's more, for me, it's more like the cross-platform aspect and the performance. If we talk like .NET 6 versus .NET Framework. And so if we talk Visual Studio, like I'm excited for Visual Studio to be on .NET 6 at some point, hopefully, fingers crossed, or 7 or 8 or whatever versions align. And so I think from a perf perspective, that's going to be super interesting. But also, like if it's cross-plat, does it mean it run on a Mac? Does it run on ARM? Does it run like, what can we then do at that point from a platform perspective? Like that's like super interesting. Let's see here. Let's just take the questions one at a time. Justin says, we will, I need to find the questions here so I can. Oh, that's not it, was it? Okay, here we go. How do we get an extension to auto load when the shell has loaded and not when the choose a project screen opens? You can't force an extension to load when shell is initialized. You can request it, but you can't guarantee it. So there is a UI context called shell initialized. So that's the one you want to do. So the reason why it can't be guaranteed is that if you open Visual Studio by double-clicking an SLN file or from the task list in Windows, then no extension is loaded before that solution is fully loaded. And so that happens after shell is initialized, right? It could happen like, if it's a huge solution, it could happen like a minute after, like if it's a huge solution. And so you don't guarantee that. So what you do is that once your extension is auto-loaded, you ask the state of Visual Studio at that point, like, is there a solution loaded, yes or no? And if there's not, don't do anything. If the solution is loaded, okay, now you can then start traversing the solution to do your thing or whatever it is your extension does. All right. I hope that works, Justin. Just going to go through. Yeah, waiting to see how many APIs need updating. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I got like over 140 extensions now, so I think we'll have a lot of opportunity to just, we're not going to take them one by one. That's going to be a lot of shows. But maybe we can have some episodes where we take multiple. Hopefully some of them are going to be super easy. That's my expectation. Okay, here's one from Marty. If I'm installing an extension outside of the gallery, should I deploy my VS 2019 and 2022 extensions separately, or should I make an extension pack? So the guidance is, and again, this is not complete. Let's see if I can find it. I'm looking at here, network share, custom installer. Okay. So I already explained about the marketplace, right? You can use an extension pack. That means you'll have 3 extensions. You'll have your main extension, and then you'll have your 2019, 2022 extensions, all in the extension pack. But that's 3 entries on the marketplace. So that's one aspect we can do. The other one is we can wait for the marketplace to allow you to have 2 extensions under the same listing on the marketplace. That'd be cool. If you want to use if you have a network share, so if you just want to take your extension and share around with your company and whatnot, then he said you'll need to share your multiple V6s individually and give them file names or place them in unique folders that help your users know which V6 to install based on the version of VS they have installed. Okay, so just put that in the version name or the title of the extension. If the extension is called Demo 16 and Demo 17, you're good. Well, you may want to rename that to Demo 2019 and Demo 2022, right? Don't use 16 and 17 because we as extenders know what that means, but the end user probably does not know or may not know. If you're using an MSI or an XE to install your extensions and you spawn up the V6 installer yourself, then know that the V6 installer in Dev 17 has been updated, right? Developers will need to use the version of the V6 installer that comes with Dev 17 to install extensions to Dev 17. Does that make sense? The V6 installer that comes with Visual Studio 2019 is not able to install extensions into 2022. It doesn't know what to do with the 64-bit thing. It's like, so if you have the custom installer, you need to call the right version of the V6 installer behind the scene. I hope that answers that question. Let's see here. Here's another one. Timebender. Will going to 64-bit make Visual Studio 2022 faster for the developers or just be able to load bigger solutions and not run out of memory? That remains to be seen. That remains to be seen. We don't know. I guess we know that just because you have more memory doesn't make you faster. Well, it makes you faster in the sense that if you were swapping or something like that, memory to disk, you no longer have to do that. That might speed things up. And it's not just the huge solutions. We've seen like where you have to just big solutions, but over time, like over some, you have Visual Studio open for days, you can kind of get close to the maximum and you might stop having issues with memory, and Visual Studio tries to optimize it and stuff like that. So those things are going to be alleviated, but Visual Studio is not just magically going to be faster in its normal operations because it's 64-bit, but there is actually a huge effort in optimizing performance as well for 2022. So, but those are tangential, right? There's not the same effort. They're separate things. Yeah. And Justin says, did you mean the shell initialize string? Yes, exactly. You got it right. That's the one for provide autoload at shell initialized. Okay, here's another one. Will the new Visual Studio interrupt NuGet packages support 2017 or 19, or are they for 2022 only? Just like any of the other SDK meta packages, they are for the version only that matches their version number. And by that I mean, if you use the Visual Studio 17 SDK, Visual Studio SDK meta package, NuGet package, you cannot support anything lower than Visual Studio 17. Just in the same way as if you're using Visual Studio SDK 16, you cannot support anything lower than Visual Studio 16 in your extension. So you want to install the, so I guess what's different this time is that normally we install the extension SDK, the VS SDK, that matches the lowest version that our extension supports. So I might sit and write it in Visual Studio 2019, but I support 2015, 2017, and 2019. I got a few of those extensions. That means I install the VS SDK. No, sorry, there's only a VS SDK for 15. That's the lowest that we have, the meta package. In that case, you develop your extension in Visual Studio 2019. You've never had to install 2017, yet you can write an extension using it because the meta package is version 15, right? Even though you're sitting in Visual Studio version 16, that's fine because you're only referencing assemblies that are also existing in Visual Studio 15. So that we cannot do when it comes to 2022, right? Because we know that we have breaking changes. So we need to have two heads on top of a shared project. Well, that's one strategy. That's the one I like to do. That's the simplest. But we need to split our code. But going forward, like Visual Studio, 18, 19, whatever, however that's going to be in the future, if there's no more breaking changes, or having the normal level of breaking changes rather, then you can sit in Visual Studio 18, writing an extension supporting both 17 and 18 using the 17 SDK NuGet package. So the support matrix is that it's always been a supported case that you can target below. That's what they call it internally. You can target below, but it's not supported to target ahead. So in other words, it may work, but it's not supported, right? You can sitting in Visual Studio 2016 and creating an extension for 2017. It may work, like by targeting this, by using the 17.0 NuGet package. That may work, but it's not supported. Okay, that was out of interest. Roughly, how many lines of code is Visual Studio? Is it second to Windows in terms of size? I don't know. I saw someone online had a thing. This is many years ago, and things are changing. I don't think Visual Studio has shrunk since then. But I think it was like the 5th largest app in the world. It was at least in top 10. I don't know how many lines of code, but it's got to be millions. I don't know. It would be fun trivia. Okay. Will Visual Studio be able to take advantage of GPU out of the box? It kind of is a little bit in its WPF rendering, but I'm not sure I understand. Like for compiling C++ projects or Unity projects or something like that, I don't know. I should get on Visual Studio office hours with the C++ team to talk about that stuff. Justin says that shall initialize triggers on choose a project page, like on the start window. No, I don't have any other idea. I have to look in the enum to see what's there on the UI context. Yeah, sorry. So what else do we have here? Image minifier. Okay. Oh, look at this. It's always good with a little bit of love here. I love VS, so kudos to you and your colleagues for such a great product. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. No, it is not downloadable yet. It's coming this summer at some point that we haven't announced yet. But, as always, go to the Visual Studio blog, and that's where we have all that information coming up. Oh, look at that. Community helping each other. That's beautiful. Oh, you're using the no solution string. Okay. So no solution is, okay, wow. No solution also is called before shell initialize, but maybe it doesn't come into effect when the start window is there. That's interesting. Okay. Awesome. All right. GPU question is about the ML model training. Oh, so it's about the IntelliCode where we train models on that. That training, I don't know, does that happen? That happens on the repo level. I don't know, does that happen locally or in the cloud? And so if it doesn't happen locally, then it doesn't matter if you can, it won't take advantage of GPU or CPU at that point. So I don't know. Okay. Now it's getting a little bit, how do I make a game in Python? That I have no idea. I've never written Python in my life. And I think I don't even know where to go ask that question to get it answered. All right. I think that's it for this time. Thank you so much. I'm baffled a little bit that you didn't get more upset or anything, and so that gives me hope that that this is not going to be a big burden to you or anyone. Extenders and people using extensions, it's going to be seamless. We really want, just like at any time we have a new major release coming out, that we have as many extensions available at the time we GA, but hopefully GA means the official version of 17.0 comes out of preview and goes GA. As many extensions as possible. So this could also be, if you run into issues with this, maybe we can have some episodes where we look at your particular extension. If it's on GitHub or whatever, we can I can clone it and we can take a look together. And this might be a good venue for that. And so we can see whatever, if you want to nominate your own extensions later on once you get your hands on it and run into issues. Oh, I saw like an interesting question here. I guess I have a related question. Will extensions ever be able to be installed and enabled without restarting? Yes. Potentially. That's a new extensibility model that the team is working on. Because the idea with the new extensibility model is that it runs completely out of proc. It doesn't run inside dev and vexy like our current extension model does. That means that if it runs out of in Service Hub services, like in .NET 6 or whatever, right? And it runs into issues, Visual Studio can like shut it down and start it back up without the user seeing anything. It also means that if you want to install something, it just works immediately without any restart. Now, the hard nut to crack there is to figure out, if you install an extension and your extension has UI in it, well, if it wants to add a new button to the toolbar or context menu and so on, Visual Studio has to like redo its command table, right? So, and has to like, how does it transfer like WPF from one process to the other? That's not supported, right? So that's the hard nut to crack, is actually the UI layer. And you could say, well, what if all UI was just a matter of data objects, and you can describe your UI in sort of a declarative way? Let's take commands, for instance. The way commands work for us today in regular extensibility is through an XML file, the VSCT file. And so we already have sort of declarative ways to create visual things like commands and menus, right? And so what if we take that metaphor and expand it to include things like tool windows? Is it a web view? Is it like, how do we do this, and how do we? Anyway, so that's the problem. That is one big challenge to solve, is the UI aspect. But something like a new language support for like an LSP language, you want to support like a Julia as a language, right? You should be able to install that and spin it up without restarting Visual Studio. We're not there yet, but that's sort of one of the goals of the new extensibility model, to allow for this. And of course, as it comes online bit by bit, as we journey through the Visual Studio 2022 timeline and all that sort of stuff, we're going to start seeing sort of that direction. So, okay. What did Marty say here? Out-of-prog extension host is the change that I'm dreading. I'm more worried about MEF computation than UI. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. MEF. Well, hang on. Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna do the MEF thing in a separate process, but I don't think there's anything stopping existing MEF from actually running out of process depending on how it's consumed, right? So, for instance, you can take all the editor stuff. What if the MEF is able to run inside a sort of a language server thing off to the side in its own process, for instance, and then let the language server be the thing that communicates between your MEF and Visual Studio, the two processes. I'm making this up, but I don't think just because we got a process that we need to like throw away what we've got and come up with something brand new. I could see a lot of cases where that doesn't have to be the case. Yes, Justin. I would love to do one. And it's actually the first one that they're converting to the new, that they're doing a new one for the new extensibility model is actually a language server. This has come up in the past. I think specifically what would be a good show on showing the language server protocol is how do we take a language that already exists, a language server that already exists. Let's say there's an extension for VS Code for Julia, the language Julia. How do we take it out of the VS Code thing and pop it into a Visual Studio one? I think that would be a super interesting episode. I have never done it. I've never written a language server before, so we'll see. But Visual Studio is getting a lot of capabilities with language server, like a lot. So you can like do a full-fledged thing in a language server now. It's pretty cool. Okay, I think that is. I think that's it for now. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I hope to see you next time. Remember Monday for the office hours where we're going to go deep on the 64-bit aspect. I'm going to learn something from that conversation, I'm sure, and I think you will as well. There are things here, and there's going to be questions that you can ask that Andy will probably know that I didn't. So if a few times tonight I've said, or today, wherever you are, this morning, that I don't know the answer, well, Andy might actually know it. So let's ask him. Cool. Well, so see you Monday. If not, see you Friday. Regardless, have a great weekend. Oh. Okay, that's it.